Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Vinyl Thoughts. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. So, back in the mid-80s, when I was a kid, that's when I was really getting into music for the first time, and I was discovering a lot of the things that I talk about on this channel. Rock and roll, hard rock, heavy metal, thrash, all of those things I started discovering in the mid-80s. But something that I don't talk about very often on this page is the fact that at the same time, the other music that I was very interested in was hip-hop. And honestly, my relationship with hip-hop is almost identical to my relationship over the years with rock and metal music, because just like rock and metal, hip-hop to me was really great in the 80s and in the early 90s, and then around the late 90s it kind of lost me a little bit, but ever since then it's just been random artists here and there that I have been interested in. Just like with rock and metal, I am an old head for hip-hop as well. The era that I am the most interested in is referred to as the golden age era of hip-hop, which is the mid-80s to the early 90s. So I thought, fuck it, it is about time that I talked about hip-hop on my channel. Now, the reason why you don't hear me talk about it a lot is because I'm pretty sure that there are hundreds of other places you can go on YouTube to hear somebody talk about hip-hop way better than I can. So this is just me wanting to express my love just in a video. And I decided to pick out 10 albums to talk about. Now, this is not my top 10. If you look at the title, it just says 10 80s hip-hop albums, because I don't know. I don't know how this video will be received. If for some reason everybody loves this, then maybe I'll come back later and do a top 10 overall favorite hip-hop albums. But today, let's just talk about some cool 80s hip-hop albums that I have in my collection. First up, let's talk about this album, Radio, the debut album from LL Cool J. This is not only the debut of LL Cool J, this is the first full-length album that was released on Def Jam Records, which at the time was run by Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin. And Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons produced this album. And it is a stone cold classic when it comes to hip-hop. I'm just gonna show off all my shit because that's what I love to do. There you go. There's the man, Cool James, right there. I think with LL Cool J, he was just one of those guys that was so gifted at being a lyricist and a rapper at such a young age that he had a charming arrogance about him that comes across on this album, and I guess the few albums after, where he was a guy that was going to prove himself at every turn. It's such an enjoyable album, and he's one of those rappers that I think anyone that you look at that does hip hop, they all look back to LL Cool J for some kind of reference. So yeah, great album. Let's move on. We're actually doing these in order. That one was from 1985. These are all original pressings from the years that they came out. Now we're going to move to 1986 with this album, Raising Hell by Run DMC. This one was pretty much the beginning of me getting into hip hop. Because I was a kid, and so it was all about like what's on TV, what are the music videos they're showing. And a really big one around this time, there you go, Profile Records. Well, of course it's upside down. Why would it not be upside down? So there you go. The video that I really don't have to talk about it. I'm sure it's been talked to death for the collaboration they did with Aerosmith, Walk This Way. That was fucking everywhere on MTV. And I remember hearing that song and loving it. But then when I believe it was one of my cousins had this album, and I heard the song Peter Piper that starts off the album, and I was like, what the fuck? This is amazing. Like I liked that so much more than the Aerosmith collaboration. And so it's a really important album to me because it really sparked my interest in hip hop, and I was like, oh, there's this music out there. I'm gonna go find it. Another interesting fact: this album, just like the one prior we talked about, the LL Cool J album, is also produced by Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons. Although this one was not on Def Jam, obviously. But there you go, a fun tidbit. Let's move on. Now we're moving into 1987 with the debut album from Boogie Down Productions, Criminal Minded. We're talking KRS-One and Scott LaRock. So this was not only the debut of Boogie Down Productions, but the first time a lot of us heard KRS-One, who would later on become a solo artist, and he's pretty legendary in his own right. But this album it's great. There's a lo-fi quality to this that just makes it sound like an album that you've discovered, and like you're listening to this and nobody knows about it, even today. So this one's on B-Boy Records. But it's an interesting album too, especially when it comes to KRS-One's history and Boogie Down Productions in general, because this is an album that's way more confrontational than KRS-One would become known for in the future. Literally 5 months out after this album was released, Scott LaRock was shot and killed. And I believe they were in the middle of making By Any Means Necessary, their second album. And KRS-One changed into being, I guess, the kind of person that wanted to educate and wanted to be smart and forward-thinking with his lyrics. But for some reason, just the braggadocio, as they say, on this album, and the confrontationalness, if that's even a word, of it all, is very enjoyable to me. We're going to stay right here in 1987, and we're going to talk about Paid in Full, the debut album from Eric B. and Rakim. Just like with Criminal Minded, it was a big deal back then because you would have, you have Rakim. I love how the copy I got, somebody put eyeliner on them. But you know what? I'm never going to turn down an old school copy of an album, even if it's got some extra eyeliner added. But anyway, Rakim is the MC, and Eric B is pretty much the guy that put all the music together. And so it's an interesting thing that at the time, that's how important the person putting the music together was. They were a part of the group. Whereas now you'll have a rapper and then you'll just see songs produced by so-and-so. I guess there are some producers who are stars on their own these days. But this album is just like Criminal Minded. It has a very lo-fi quality. Apparently this album, I believe, was recorded in like 5 days or something like that. Something real quick. And the big thing about this is obviously Rakim's lyrical approach, because he was way more sophisticated with what he was doing than a lot of other rappers at the time. And this album has the song Paid in Full. It's got I Ain't No Joke. This might be in my actual top 10 hip hop albums ever. It's just an interesting listen because it doesn't necessarily go where you think it's going to go. There are sections of this album where it's almost instrumental at times, and other times it almost seems like it's just a track that was sort of meant to be kind of a background track with very minimal vocals. The song Paid in Full has like one verse, and then they talk a little bit, and then that's it. But it is a goddamn classic. So, but that was the cool thing about hip hop at the time, is that it was so new and it was burgeoning and becoming so popular that, but there were no rules. Like nobody. It's not a music that had been going on for 30 years. And so, everyone just did what they felt. There you go. This is on 4th and Broadway Records, I believe, which is part of Island Records, which Island Records would later have Anthrax. I guess Anthrax was on the label around the same time that this album came out. So there you go. Eric B. and Rakim, Paid in Full. All right, let's stay in 1987 and let's do another debut album. I'm really into these debut albums. There's something cool about them. But the debut album from Ice-T, Rhyme Pays. At this point, who doesn't know who Ice-T is? You either know him from this, from Body Count, from, what's that show called? Law and Order SVU. He's a jack of all trades, I guess you would say, when it comes to the entertainment industry. So yeah, there you go. So a young Ice-T there. So this album, especially the song 6 in the Morning, is one of those things where you can trace back what became gangster rap to this. He was much more of a laid-back storyteller kind of rap is. I mean, whenever he does hip-hop. And this is on Sire Records. As opposed to a lot of other rappers where it was almost like there was a competition, with everyone trying to one-up somebody else, or basically just trying to show everything they got at every turn, like LL Cool J. And Ice-T didn't come across that way. Ice-T came across like a guy who just had some stories to tell, and he didn't really give a shit if you wanted to listen. He was going to rap anyway. And so, yeah, another fucking classic album. All right, let's move into 1988 and let's lighten the mood a little bit. He's the DJ. I'm the rapper from DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. For a lot of us, this was our introduction to Will Smith. I didn't hear anything off of the first DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince album. This was their second one. But this one broke really big with the song Parents Just Don't Understand and A Nightmare on My Street, which was a huge fucking deal to me because not only was I becoming a rap fan, I was a huge fan of horror movies, including the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Another interesting fact about this album, it was apparently the first double album that ever came out from the hip-hop genre. And that's what I like about this album. Well, it's a really great album. It's a really fun listen. But you have album number 1 in here, which is pretty much just your average album with songs as you would expect them to sound. And then this one, which is album number 2, if you look, I don't know if you can see in the thing here, but it actually says, where does it say it here? Come on. Oh yeah, there's a really small print where it says bonus scratch album. And what this is, it's still a collection of songs. I believe it's like 8 or 10 tracks. It's 8 tracks, and there's like a live track on here. There's a couple that are just more like showing off the skills of DJ Jazzy Jeff, and for some reason, for me, it just adds this other level of enjoyableness to the album because sure, you hear a lot of these groups and these artists come through with their finished product of well, here's the beat and here's me rapping over it and here's our album, but they included like this little extra thing where it's almost like just if you want to hang around and party with us a little bit longer, we have a bonus scratch record for you to enjoy. So I wish that more artists did that kind of shit. I guess nowadays they do. If you're talking about putting things out online, there's always bonus tracks and things like that. So maybe this was the beginning of the bonus tracks right here, folks, from Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff. All right, we're gonna stay here in 1988, and we're gonna talk about an album that is absolutely in my top 10 hip hop albums. If I do a top 10, this will be there. The first album from EPMD, Strictly Business, which stands for Eric and Parrish Making Dollars. And this album is just so fucking good. It is, it's the first time that I remember hearing like funk music samples that you would later hear a lot, like in the 90s and stuff. It's on Fresh Records. But this album, something about it, it's a fun album, but it also has a very laid back quality to the whole thing. If any album out of these is the one that you're supposed to smoke a joint to, I believe it's this one. It just feels so good. Sometimes there are some albums that's all you can say about them. It just feels good. All the samples are just right on, and the groove is there, and the vocal delivery is just so. It's so just effortless, and I never get tired of listening to Strictly Business. It is, like I said, this is one of my top 10 hip hop albums ever made. Okay, let's hang out in 1988 a little while longer and talk about Supersonic, the album from JJ Fad, the first and one of only 2 albums put out by JJ Fad. And the song Supersonic was a big deal when I was a kid. I fucking loved that song. I still love that song. And I guess if we're talking about fun facts, This album is on Ruthless Records, which, if any of you know anything about hip-hop, Ruthless Records is the label started by Eazy-E and the white dude that ended up putting out NWA albums. And in fact, this album, it apparently was produced by Arabian Prince from NWA, but it's credited with Dr. Dre and DJ Yella. And this was literally happening at the same time as Straight Outta Compton was being recorded. So this is more of a light, fun hip hop album that has like electro elements. If you don't know what electro is, I don't got time. Go look it up. But it's interesting that this was happening, and at the same time they were getting ready. I believe Straight Outta Compton came out 5 or 6 months after this album came out. I mean, that's pretty crazy. So there you go, Ruthless Records. There's the label right there. But this one is albums like this to me are like the epitome of the sort of 80s party hip hop, where it's just made to have a good time. And I always have a good time listening to JJ Fad. That's for goddamn sure. And in case you were wondering, JJ Fad stands for Just Jammin', Fresh and Deaf. There you go. Old head, bringing you the answers to all of your questions that you may not even be asking. Okay, one more from 1988. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, the second album from Public Enemy. This is, I don't know if this would be in my top 10, but it's pretty goddamn close. This is a great album to me because the first Public Enemy album is really good, but this is the one where I feel like they figured out their thing, and it feels so much like a statement, like they fucking knew exactly what they were doing and they just fucking nailed it on this album. This is on Def Jam Records. A lot of great shit was put out on Def Jam in the 80s. There you go. And I guess for us metalheads, this album is noteworthy because did I say noteworthy? I've never pronounced that word that way. Noteworthy because it includes the song Bring the Noise, which would later be semi-covered by Anthrax along with Public Enemy, although they just used the vocal tracks from this. So it's interesting to hear that song because, I mean, this is back in 1988, and the name check of Anthrax, because they mentioned Anthrax in the song, was a pretty fucking big deal. And I bet, for the guys in Anthrax, it was a big deal for them too. And this also has Rebel Without a Pause and Don't Believe the Hype. It is just a stone cold fucking classic, and Public Enemy is one of the greatest rap groups ever in the history of the game. Not a lot more to talk about there, folks. Let's move on to the last album we're going to talk about. Okay, we're going to end this video in 1989 with another album that is definitely in my top 10, may even be number 1. I don't know. If I ever do a video like that, we'll find out. The debut album from De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising. It's still an album that blows me away today. It is unlike, I think, anything else that had happened by that point. This would kind of be the beginning of what would be referred to as alternative rap, kind of moving from the late 80s into the 90s. There were other bands doing similar things at the same time, but I think this was kind of the first big one that came out. And De La Soul, a great group. This album is almost psychedelic at times. There's such a wide variety of samples. There's a cool comic on this, and then you get the attitude and the personality of this band within the artwork for sure. And this is on Tommy Boy Records, which apparently there has been a lot of disagreements with Tommy Boy and De La Soul. So if you are a old school hip hop fan and a De La Soul fan, if you see any reissues coming out of De La Soul albums, don't buy them because I don't think De La Soul is on board, and I don't think they're getting paid what they should get paid. So this album is really great, and it's got so much going on. It's so many different levels of shit here. I believe this may be the beginning of when sketches and interludes and stuff like that started popping up on albums a lot. And this album has even been referred to as the dark side of the moon of hip hop. And I guess you can make that comparison. You could also say Sgt. Pepper's. I guess I don't know, but it is up there as an album that if you're talking classic music from the 80s and you don't mention this album, I'm going to assume you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So yeah, this is the last one of the night or of the day. Whenever you're watching this, De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising. I don't even know if this is out on streaming platforms. Just find it somewhere and listen to it because it's fucking great. All right, so that's all I got for you for today. I don't know how many of you actually made it this far. Maybe some of you even unsubscribed because you don't like that shitty rap music. Well, you know what? Fuck you. Get the fuck off my channel. For those of you who did stick around, if you enjoyed this video, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm not intending to stray away from talking about rock and metal because that is my true love when it comes to music, but I cannot deny the impact that hip hop has had on me and the fact that I still listen to a lot of this shit constantly. I would probably say I'd hold it up there with how I feel about thrash metal. I'm pretty fanatical about this era of hip hop and into the 90s, which maybe if you guys like this video, I'll talk about some early 90s shit next time. So please let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching my shit. If you're new to my channel, welcome. All my other shit is not about hip hop, but I hope you enjoyed this video. So please like, please subscribe, comment away down below, and I will see you all again very soon.